As I'm sure everyone who knows the story is familiar, the original Stephen King short story didn't have half of the details that you see in the film. So I believe my understanding is they developed that character for a variety of reasons. They wanted probably a sympathetic character in sort of the high priestess role. So having a teenager who was pregnant. Apparently I had a couple kids in the front row as well. So watching all the sacrificial activities, but it was a combination of fleshing out the story, but also having that high priestess character to really demonstrate how deep the deception, the manipulation, and the evil, the corruption had gone by having that whole ceremony in the church.
Well, I mean, I had just signed with my agent at the time, Steve Dontonville. I just graduated at a theater school, USC, and I had done a couple of plays, and I'd started like going on general auditions, and then my agent, Steve Dontonville, knew these casting directors, Jeff Berg and something Francis, I think, and he was like, this be a good first part for you. You know, this was the first movie I ever did. It's the first movie I ever did. And so, and I was trying to learn how to audition and stuff. And so I was really happy to meet these people. I was really happy to, you know, audition for a horror movie, you know, because I love horror movies. And I think that showed, you know, and I looked okay, you know, even though I was quite a bit older than 18 or whatever, how old Amos had to sacrifice himself to He Who Walks Behind the Rose. But I looked young at the time, and I just auditioned, I got it. It was the very first movie I ever did. I understand it was based on a short story by Stephen King. I'm not sure Amos was in the short story. Someone else would know that, but I did not read the short story. So as a Hollywood actor, it just came about by an audition from my agent, you know, to these casting directors who they had a good relationship, and they liked me, and I liked them very much, and I really liked the project, and I was pretty excited to be a part of it, and I think that came about, and luckily I got it. It was the first movie I ever did, and so it's a fond memory for me. Audition 1983, I think. You go to an office. I think they rented office space somewhere because it's an independent film, and it's like, you know, you sit in the hallway and you see a bunch of kids who look like you and women that, you know, are auditioning for roles, and, you know, you're just trying to stay focused on what you have to do in the room and where you're coming from. So I was very new to this and very enthusiastic and very excited, and you just go into the room, meet the people. At that time, I think I was really into charm, trying to charm people, you know, but I meant it. It's like I wanted to feel love for the people, and I felt love for what I was doing. And I was very enthusiastic at that time. So for me, it was just a very positive experience. There was nothing dramatic about it or nothing traumatic about it. It was very easy, very fun, and like, let's do this, you know. So it was a very good experience for me.
Oh gosh, it was actually kind of fun for me because in the process of auditioning, I had only done one film before that time. And I remember being in the room for callbacks, but I don't remember the original audition, but I remember the callbacks because the stakes were a lot higher. And so I kind of felt the pressure of, wow, I could really actually get this role. And I remember kind of a funny story about being in the waiting room and noting who else was in the room and noting the different types that were represented in the room. And of course, I'm petite, I had my curly hair, sort of the ethnic thing going. And I remember kind of observing, oh, okay, that girl's really cute, that one's pretty, that one's sort of tall and lanky looking, you know, sort of maybe more of a classic film lead character. One gal in particular, I remember she was really pretty. She had long hair. And I remember thinking, they'll probably go with her because she looked more straightforward, like for casting a teen for a film. And I remember being totally shocked when I got it. And I remember my agent telling me, I remember telling her, oh yeah, I thought this, are you sure? I thought for sure this other girl would get it. And she goes, well, I guess they liked your hair. And I remember thinking, yeah, it had nothing to do with my acting. That's comforting, But then it's one of those interesting moments where you realize the variables that go into making a decision often are something as simple as that character looks a little offbeat, they look a little different, we're going to go with that character. You've got capable actresses on both hands, but maybe it was something as simple as I looked off, a little off the beaten path, off track, So anyway, that was a standout kind of memory for me of the whole process. I thought it was pretty funny. It surprised me pleasantly. Oh, the art direction was so fun and so creepy. Very, very impactful for me as an actress to be in that environment. The set was great. It was so helpful and great attention to detail. The corn theme was they did such a good job playing that to the hilt. Pardon the expression, they really used that as a great plumb line in all of their decorating. And I remember, of course, walking into the church scene. I remember walking into that scene going, growing up as a Catholic and being a strong person of faith when I started the show was kind of, it worked. It was deeply disturbing, and it helped me definitely cross over into the depravity, the perversion, because it really was especially that set was a perversion. But boy, they did a good job. The art direction really helped us as actors totally get into the moment. And there were so many, today I feel like I can still remember what it was like being inside of the church. I remember watching aspects of the scene when I wasn't in the middle of it from up above in the balcony choir loft, and it was very excellent, very thorough, and very disturbing.
We flew into Sioux City. I'd never been to Iowa. We flew into Iowa, and I was put up in a hotel. It was very flat. And I was like, where's the corn? And they said, it's on the location, I was in a city and there were malls and stuff. And when I first went out to the set, and by the way, I loved Sioux City, Iowa. But like I said, it's my first film. I'm 23 years old, I think. I'm getting a per diem, which is, I haven't had a per diem in 30 years. It's like they give you an envelope of cash. And you're already in a hotel and you could go to the set and eat. And I'd never worked as a SAG actor before, so it blew me away. So I'm in love with Sioux City. Look at this mall, it's great. I've got an envelope of cash. Where's the set? And I just remember going to the set. It's the first set I'd ever been on, first movie I'd ever done, and there were a bunch of stunt workers or something in my room, in my trailer, like smoking cigarettes. And I think that was like because it was my first job, and these guys were like, well, who's this guy? And they're like, I felt like it was like an initiation, like how am I going to handle these people who don't have their name on the door in my honey wagon? I was kind of hurt, like I was like, oh man, this is rough, but it's really not rough. I look back on it now, it's like you can only do that to someone one time, and maybe that was their thing. But I didn't work in the town the way, like I didn't see the set decoration of the town till I saw the movie. The things I saw were the cornfield where I sacrificed myself, which was amazing. And I'd heard, it's been a drought, so they're spraying cornfields and stuff. I'd heard those stories. But when I went to the clearing to be sacrificed, it was nighttime and it was beautiful. And when we did the other scene that I only have two scenes, I think, is when I carved the pentagram in my chest. in the church, it was designed, it was super creepy and really cool and really well designed. I don't know who the set designer was or the art director or whatever, but they did a great job. When I saw the movie with the town, I was totally blown away because I didn't get to see those things, you know, from what I did. I just went to the set on the days I worked, on the sets I worked. I was blown away by the art direction when I saw the film. And when I did my scenes, I was like, this is just sufficiently creepy. And I love location, so being out in the field at night and seeing all those kids, and it was super fun. It was magic for me. That was a special effect. And they handed me this knife, and the guy explained to me there's a tube coming out of the back of the knife that when you touch this thing, blood comes out of the tube, and there's someone sitting right next to me going, pump, 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 pumping blood. So as I'm slowly moving the knife around my chest, he's pumping blood out, and blood's coming out of the thing. So we had to, you know, close up, had to do it a bunch of times to watch the blood coming out. And then then a makeup person would come in and do the pentagram completely with dried blood and cut blood. It's a special effect, and it looked really cool. And sometimes I'd go over that with the fresh blood. Sometimes I had to do some stuff before the thing was cut, was drawn on me. But it's without a doubt, what I remember about that scene is doing sit-ups and push-ups in the other room before I had to go in. I was like, God, the guy might have my shirt off. I was like, I remember Fritz, Kiersch, you know, and Don Borgers, the producer and director, coming and going, God, you do more sit-ups and push-ups than anybody I've ever seen in my life, man. You got a lot of energy. And I was like, take your shirt off in your first movie ever. I just thought it was so funny to me that, you know, people are working on this stuff and I'm working on doing sit-ups and push-ups. But I just wanted to make sure I was toned. But it was real. I love having a pentagram on my chest. I love that my character had a pentagram on his chest. I love that he carved it in his chest with a knife, because that kind of self-mutilation, you know, I love that kind of cutting stuff, you know, and it was really extreme. And I was kind of punk rock before I started acting. I was kind of on the fringes of punk rock, so I just thought that cutting a pentagram in your chest is really one of the coolest things you could do. And luckily it didn't stay because it was just a movie, so it was really fun.
It was fun on a lot of levels. I liked stabbing Peter Horton. That was exciting because it was a trick knife. And that was really fun to play that out. And Peter was great to work with and very encouraging and supportive, very much committed to me going ahead and just going for it. He didn't want me to hold back and go ahead and just be tough on him. Trying to make sure I hit my mark under his shirt so that I didn't stab him for real. And then of course working with John in the scene where he's carving the pentagram into his chest, and how realistic that moment was. And he did such a good job that was also helpful in creating the disturbance of the moment. I loved the moment of Bring Malachi was just such a fun moment for me as an actress. The scene had so many neat layers. I remember just the reality of having my kids sit in the front row, because I didn't have any other moments where that connection was sort of highlighted. And although if you watch the film, you probably would not have a clue that was there. But that helped me as an actress as well, because, I knew I was pregnant because I had the physical, costume elements for that, choosing my words carefully. But having the kids there was just another layer. I thought that scene was very fleshed out and rich for me as an actress, because there were so many layers, so many fun moments in there. I had fun doing it. Oh, it was so fun. We had a lot of fun. The camaraderie that you see of the kids in the story you know, that, and camaraderie seems like a kind word to use for what was happening actually in the film, but the camaraderie that you see, the connectedness that you see, we had a lot of that. We had a lot of fun together doing it. The kids that came in from Sioux City were so happy to be there. The families were happy to have them be a part of it. So it was really neat. It was neat to be able to be like a big sister, you know, to them as they were coming in and doing something some of them had never done before. And that was neat. And the kids the two main kids were just so sweet and so talented and so professional. And you know, it was a pleasure working with them. Of course, we didn't have many scenes with them in particular, but it was neat to enjoy that process with them. And it was kind of scary, so I felt a little protective of them too. Wasn't a mom at the time, but I always kind of had that in my DNA. So I just wanted to make sure the kids weren't scared and that they understood that it was just a story. And they did such a good job, I think, balancing being there, fully present, but understanding it wasn't real, even though it was scary set at times.
Well, I had graduated college. This is my first thing. I was a theater major. All I can assume is that all these kids were theater majors from high school who say, hey, there's a movie coming to town. You want to be in a movie? And auditioned and got lucky enough to get in it. Because, you know, for the kids. Because, I mean, that's a dream come true for a summer job. It's like, I'm going to be in a horror movie in my hometown. It's possible someone called me from Sioux City. We may go out there and see a bunch of the kids, like, and show the movie this year, like, for an anniversary thing, which would be great because my scenes were with Julie, with Peter. I really liked Linda Hamilton. I mean, she was really fun to hang out with, and I got to know her husband at the time, Bruce Abbott, and then we ended up doing a movie together, Dillinger. But I mean, it was all new to me. So the kids, I never got to hang out with the kids. I would love to have hung out with the kids, but I was a separate case. You know, I couldn't, you know, some people are method actors, you know, it just means like, well, should I hang out with these kids? Like, I didn't think I should. I thought, I'm getting ready to leave this party. You know, I'm not one of them anymore, and I'm already in that transitional zone. So just as a character study, it wasn't because I didn't like those kids. Every time I'd see them after the movie, and I would every once in a while, they'd come to LA. Some of them came to LA and were actors. I'd see them, I'd be like, yeah, we were in that movie together. And they looked familiar and everything, but I didn't socialize with the other children. I kept on my own path at the time, but they all seemed wonderful to me. Now, the actors that played kids, Courtney Gaines, I mean, those guys were just kind of, I think they'd acted before, and they were like, I was like, wow, those guys have big parts, and they're real actors, and I want to do that. Yeah, no, I have absolutely no concerns about a bunch of high school drama students who get to be in a horror movie in the summer.
Yeah, I felt very, you know, protective, especially in the church scene. And there wasn't a lot I could do to shelter them from that, knowing that the nature of the show is that it's a horror film. And that the folks of the kids who are doing the film, I hope they knew what they were getting into. I'm trusting that they did. So I'm trusting that there was some coverage there for them at home. But again, like I had mentioned earlier, just making sure that we had a lot of fun between takes and laughed and joked, and the kids could see it was all pretend, and I wasn't, in my case, my character was pretty scary, but that I wasn't a scary person, and just like them, you know, having fun. I remember sitting and playing with my kids, you know, on the pew in between takes, and yeah, just trying to keep that normalcy for them in between shots was something I know I wasn't the only one thinking about it, but I definitely took a vested interest in making sure they were comfortable. Yeah, heavy duty stuff, especially for kids, seeing kids do it. Like, don't try this at home. Say these are trained professionals, but they're not even that. They're just actors, so it's not a good idea to kill your parents or murder everybody in town. Don't even think about it.
I mean, it was all me. I mean, Fritz was, you know, he cast me based on what I did, and he liked what I was doing. So there was no direction other than technical direction. He's a director. You know, you get into movies, you think, you know, like you're doing a play. It's not like that. You know, they've got so many things going on. Unless there's a problem, you don't need to hear anything from them. You know, and that surprised me as an actor because I can't come from the theater, and it was my very first film, and I didn't know what to expect. You know, you're on the set, and you know the director's got 100 things on his mind. He's hoping that you do your job, so that he doesn't have to worry about. That's one less thing he has to worry about. That, and I really, you know, I saw that, and I take that very seriously. I mean, the casting's so important. Once you cast someone, you just hope they can do it. And you know, I was doing whatever I was doing was okay with him. So I didn't get, you know, nothing was from him. Like, you know, the lighting and the camera angles and the, you know, the action stuff is from him and everything. And he was great. I really like. He's super mellow, cool guy. My take on the character Amos, not having, you know, all I did was read the script. So I go, this guy's a true believer, and he's going to sacrifice himself. So he's got to be believing that where he's going is better than where he is, and he's got to be 100. I mean, that's the ultimate sacrifice. So he's got to be in a state, like a completely protected state psychologically. You know, and immune to criticism, because I know there was going to be a confrontation in the church with Peter, and there's going to be some, you know, the other kids are willing to fight for me to die. You know, they'll kill for me, for my right to die at this time. So I was like, you know, I felt like a princess. I felt like a princess, but not a reluctant princess. I felt like it was an honor, what I was going to do, and that I was a hero. And so that's how I felt. I felt like I'm awesome. I'm a rock star is what I felt like. I'm going to be a rock star. And I had that kind of bleary-eyed faith of the convicted, you know, where you cannot touch their faith. So, you know, and I had joined a spiritual program before it, not for the movie, just for myself, though, and I had seen when some people are just infused with a certain belief and faith that you can't, you know, it's almost, when they're totally in the zone, it's like they're not connected 100%. Some of them aren't, and that's the way I went with it. That's the choices I made. Like, this guy is 100% into what's going to happen. He's completely willing and enthusiastic and is all about this. And that's where my mind was at. Then, of course, it was the first movie I've ever did. So you get on the set, and there's cameras and people and makeup, and, you know, am I going to be a professional actor? And fear kicks in. It's like, it's so frightening because I'd never done it before, and I was just had to focus on just being completely simple and almost clearing my mind, almost really clearing my mind so there's not a thought in my head. And I think it shows. I think fear helped a lot. And like, oh, this is fucking scary. I'm just going to be like, everything's going to be fine. And that's what came across. You know, when I look at it, I go, fuck, I'm scared to death, but it kind of works. You know, coupled with the research I'd done about I'm not going to have any doubt. You know, when you're young sometimes, like soldiers, whatever, you know, you can do things that you would never do when you have a little more knowledge. And that's the way I played it, like completely, I'm all in, and no one can touch me. And that sort of an innocent ignorance, but completely full of faith. It was fun.
That scene was so fun. It was so fun. They added that scene. If I remember correctly, I've had that happen to me a couple times where they add stuff, like pretty horrific stuff, and for my characters. But if I remember correctly, they added that scene, so that was very exciting to have that extra moment for my character. And then doing the scene, they wanted to make sure I felt comfortable doing it because it was kind of considered a stunt, climbing over the seat with a pregnant belly and getting a door slammed into my head was, you know, I don't know, it's considered stuntish. But I was really happy to do it. I loved loved the challenge because I'm very physical anyway, and so it was really fun to do. Peter Horton was a dream to work with. He was so kind, so sweet, so down to earth, very, very, very friendly, and yeah, that was a fun moment to work out with him. And of course, I had to be in character, so I couldn't enjoy the moment from that standpoint, but I definitely enjoyed being able to do that. Yeah. It was a fun moment. It was fun, and I think probably the extra fun for me is knowing that it wasn't originally in the script, so that it was kind of a surprise to me. And so to know that the audience would be surprised by it too made it extra fun. Yeah, we used to joke it would be children of the corn, because I was pregnant but not dead. So we were always curious, like, what's the outcome of that going to be? Like, kill her, don't you know? They always come back.
Yeah, I'm a fan of all horror films. I love horror films. I always have loved horror films ever since I was a little kid. I mean, yes is my answer, but it's like, at this particular stage of my life, I'm 57 now, I don't have kids. And, all my relationships have had kids, so I know what it's like to be like a step-parent, or to be around a lot of kids. Also, I lived in Pacific Palisades for a long time, which is like Chuck E. Cheese. So, and also I was, because I was such a horror movie aficionado when I was very young, killing my parents and other people's parents, killing adults with knives and swords and axes and stuff, and self-sacrifice, self-mutilation, any type of Christ or satanic or Christian, ideology and ritualization was fascinating to me as a little ghoul. So I'm all into the kids, slaughtering the adults. Now, as I get older, now that I'm older, the way I look at it as, I love my parents. I love my dad, my mom. They were awesome. And I love the parents. I know a lot of people that are parents now, and it's not easy. It is a difficult task that I never was interested in. Not because of this movie. I just wasn't interested in that job. But as I'm older and I look at the kids around these days, it's like they should do a movie where, the adults just slaughter the kids. Where if the kids are spoiled or they're just doing this, like, it'd be just like it's just absolutely fine. And that would be awesome. But then who's gonna, they kill all the children, and it's like, babies are cool. But there's a certain age when we were, that movie is about those kids at that certain age. It's like, wouldn't, Malachi, I mean, you just want to kill him, just want to kill the guy. I mean, just kill him. So I don't know how to, that it's an interesting topic. I look at these children sometimes and they just torture their parents. They torture them. And, the choices they make and the things they do, and the parents can't control them. They just, Stephen King's really good at these parents like cowering around on the powerful children, and they just get cowed by these, terrible infants. And it's like, it serves them right, sometimes. But they can't help it. I don't know. I can't take that bridge over, because I don't have kids. I can't take that bridge over to a person who loses all rationale and all intelligence in the service of a child who is doing everything wrong because they don't know. So it's an interesting topic, but I'm a fan of the genre, yes.
Yes and no. I'll be honest, while I was raising my kids, I was definitely not a fan. And once they got older and we could watch things together and kind of enjoy things without me worrying about protecting them, then I was able to enjoy a little bit more. So yes, no, yes. When I did it, of course, it was fun, and you know, before I had kids, one of the things Lee and I discussed was how disconcerting and unnerving it is when you see that a child can be that corrupted, because we look to a child to be sort of a symbol of innocence, and we actually aspire to the innocence of a child, you know, as adults. So when you see that a child would cross over or be, capable of such evil, or, you know, possessed to do evil, it's like quadruply disarming. So it's very effective for the horror movie genre. Sad but true. It strikes me as almost, and at the time it struck me, as almost being in a category all its own, because the film wasn't written by Stephen King. The germ of the idea was his, and then it was developed for film. So I always kind of put it in a different category, but knew it was kind of like the stepchild, you know, in terms of, you know, being folded into the Stephen King family. But I mean, if you think of some of his films, Misery, Cujo, The Shining, I'd have to say that really the adaptation, I think, did a good job of taking it where he would have taken it, and definitely competitive in the Stephen King genre for a place with his other films. Like I won't talk about his other films much, but I would say that besides The Shining and some references to Misery, I hear people talk more about Children of the Corn than many of the other Stephen King films. So I think that speaks very highly of the adaptation. It speaks highly of the direction, speaks highly of all the elements that had to come together to create a memorable, impactful film. So I was thankful to be a part of it.
I mean, I'm prejudiced, you know, I'm in the movie, and I know it has a fan base. You know, for some reason, this movie, I mean, every other Stephen King adaptation is made with a ton of money and movie stars, you know, and they're fantastic. I think they're all fantastic. I mean, Stephen King's, that's a tribute to him. He's such a good writer and storyteller that even Children of the Corn, a low-budget, new world, no stars film, can become a cult classic with a franchise behind it. I don't know if the other Stephen King movies have franchises behind it, you know? I don't follow it like that. You know, I don't like to go to 2, 3, 4, 5. Some franchises I do, big action franchises and stuff, and some horror movies, but I didn't, you know. I just know this movie touched a lot of people in a way. They remember it. They were scared when they saw it, and they remembered it. And then it's grown, and people have liked something about the 80s movies, you know, like before computers, people just are attached to them, and they show them, and they go through a couple generations of people. So I think as a tribute to Stephen King, you know, even a low-budget, independent, skeleton crew, no movie stars, can make a movie that became a cult classic and spawned a franchise, when every other Stephen King movie, people just go, oh, it's Stephen King, we're just going to throw a ton of money at it. So I think Don Borchers, whoever, you know, the people who got the rights and decided, and Fritz Kiersch, they did a fantastic job. I wouldn't look at it critically in comparison to other Stephen King's movies, because this is the only one I've ever been in, and it became a cult classic. So I'm just lucky and happy that I got to be a part of it. Yeah, I did. I actually joined a cult, a spiritual cult, not, you know, for a little while. And no, I joined one and I participated, and I just did a lot of research in it, and it ended up being really cool. Not a cult, but people consider it a cult. But yeah, I did a little research in it, just enough.
I did do research. The mentality of getting caught up in a cult, especially children getting caught up in the cult, was something that I really needed to explore. It's a it's a dark and tough concept, but I really wanted to make sure that I understood the psychology behind it, how somebody could get so pulled into something, especially something so corrupted. If you look at a lot of cults, often they're really relatively benign. You know, they're often just a twist on the familiar, with some person being worshipped, and every now and again, of course, it ends in tragedy. But this was such a dark version of that I definitely wanted to understand the psychology, how someone could go that far, how a whole group of kids could go that far. Yeah, I liked the transformation that the couple went through. I liked the arc that Linda Hamilton's character went through. Very relatable for a woman to be kind of have the heartstrings pulled by the situation that two children are in, two vulnerable children. And then, of course, the arc that Peter Horton went through was also very relatable for a man who's really not that interested and not in a hurry, and eventually, you know, has his heart won over by the two innocents. Now, I think a lot can be said about the message of a group of children being influenced so heavily and having such a devastating impact on a culture, because, you know, you consider the community and the culture of the community, that they basically completely devastated it and you know, started something new based on the, you know, evil seed introduced by Isaac. So I definitely think and now we see, I think in our generation, we see how much value has been attributed to the child in our culture, and how much I think the importance of what they say and think and feel, and the importance of how what we do and say impacts them, and the importance that they have, you know, the value that they have, but also the weight they have for our future. So I think it was a very, I think they covered all of those bases with what happened in Children of the Corn, because you saw the impact on first one influential child, and then a whole group of influential children following a bad idea to its resolve, and killing everything good basically in the town is a powerful picture. And then having the husband and wife come in as outsiders to that scene, having enough strength as a couple to combat the evil, and then the redemption of being able to take the kids out of that. And you kind of get that sort of end of the world, but there's hope moment out of it, which is another wonderful image you'll see played out in films a lot. You know, this is bad, it's so bad, but there's that sort of Noah's Ark concept. And life is gonna continue, and it's gonna be okay because we're able to take a seed and preserve it and get it out of that environment. So yeah, a lot of messages in that film that were, I think, sort of classic, really. I think that's probably why it's endured. Every woman can relate to what Linda Hamilton went through. Every dad can relate to what Peter Horton went through. Every little kid whose, you know, parents have left them or who feel vulnerable can relate to the little kids. And then, of course, I imagine everybody who's slightly left of center can relate to the kids that get pulled away and sucked into a bad idea.
I kind of touched on that question about childless couples fending off, you know, and I can't speak to it politically, you know, or psychologically. I mean, that question's over my head. You know, I don't know. I haven't seen the film in probably 30 years, so it's more like as I get older, the more, you know, Stephen King wasn't, you know, he was probably my age when he wrote it, and I see it through different eyes now. You know, and the eyes I see it through are definitely like, parents get afraid of their children. They get scared of their children, and it's and a lot of shit happens when that happens, you know, and things go to shit. And kids need discipline. More in like the butler in The Shining, like the bartender in The Shining, and I corrected her. But it's like, you know, I think a lot of people's nightmares, like when I was at a different stage in my life, when I was living around a bunch of gangsters, you know, like there was a time when I was living around a bunch of, you know, hooligans, and they were really into violence, and they didn't really respect life. They had their own creed. It wasn't they were doing it for some magical he who walks behind the rose. But I mean, when you're young, you're very impressionistic, and you can get hooked. You can identify yourself with an idea. You can identify your whole life to it, and you can give your life to it, you know. And you see, and those kids are terrifying. You know, they're terrifying. I just remember looking at the youth that were into violence in a stage of my life where they didn't respect life. And that's frightening, because they don't know how lucky they are to be alive. You know, they don't understand that yet. And when you get older, you just want to live another day. You just want to enjoy. You're like, fuck, I'm alive. I'm still alive. I made it through, and I get to be alive. And then the last thing you want to do is come up around a gang or a group of people that don't respect your life and want to kill you, you know. And that's frightening. And I think that that's a real fear for, you know, every adult anywhere. No, I was dead, so I didn't see any of the other movies, except I did see the remake that Don Borchers made. He came back and made the original Children of the Corn, and he had produced, and I assume still owned the rights to Children of the Corn, the original. Good for him. He got to direct it. He was a producer, and he got to direct it, and he's really super cool. And I think he did a really good job. But I don't follow any of the other ones, but I did see that one just out of loyalty and respect for him.
I actually did not end up seeing the sequels, and I will tell you why. Primarily because I did end up auditioning for one, and I remember reading the script and telling my agent I'm not interested, because the direction it went, with all due respect to the people making the film, I felt it, from what I could see from the script that I was reading, it took a really more commercial turn, and it sort of left behind the very original stamp that Children of the Corn had on it, the original one. And I just wasn't interested in doing those stories. Children of the Corn was so original. I was happy to have been a part of it, and happy to not try to make the other stories recapture anything of that first experience. So I know that some sequels are amazing and some sequels eclipse the original, and I don't have a problem with sequels being written, especially when a story is enjoyed. I just personally didn't enjoy what I saw happening. So yeah, and I never ended up watching the sequels. It was kind of funny because people would say, oh, there's a Children of the Corn, this number and that number and this number out, and I remember thinking there are, like, somehow I just missed them all. I think I must have been busy doing something else, because somehow I didn't even notice some of the others that came out, so kind of missed it. Yeah, I remember he had mentioned that to me, and I did not know that, and I remember when we talked about it, I thought, oh, I gotta watch that one, and I haven't yet, but I would like to watch that, because that's fun. I like that idea of her all grown up. What would that look like? I don't know, but I'm honored that she played me as a grown-up, since I have not changed that much, so I don't think I could play a grown-up me. I don't know if I could get it, pull it off, but yeah, I was glad to hear that, but no, I really didn't hear much about the sequels. I know that John Franklin went on and did a number of them, and I was happy for him that he got to do that. That was neat for him.
Okay, it was like a dream. When I worked at night and went into the cornfield in a procession with all the kids who I didn't know and because I hadn't been interacting with, but I knew they were big parts in the movie. And I got to see, you know, that path. I think like I said, I'd been like doing push-ups and sit-ups, and like I had a pentagram on my chest and I was about to go, and to me it was like a rock star going into an arena, and or a fighter, you know. And I was just like, that night was kind of mad. The way the lights were in the field is my first night shoot on location in a film, and it looks surreal. And I just remember like pulling my shirt off the side of my thing because Flashdance was a big hit, and I wanted to show off, you know, all the work I'd been doing. And the costume designer kept coming up and going like this, and I was like, no, I want to wear it like that. It's like hanging off my thing, and they're like, no, but it's, and I'm like, no. This is how Amos is wearing his shirt into the field. And I just remembered, and they looked at me like, what the fuck is your problem, dude? And I just remember thinking like, this narcissistic delusions of grandeur. I had these delusions of grandeur because the lights were coming and there was a mist, and all these little teenagers were like, you know, supposed to look at me like, this is awesome. And I'm not a rock star, and I've never would be, or a boxer or anything like that. But I was like, this is as close as I'm going to come to, the total narcissistic center of attention, rock star ever. And I'm just a kid, and it's his first movie in Hollywood, and he gets to go through this procession into this field and get hung on a cross. And that was surreal to me and magic, and it was bigger than life. And I knew that my life as that character was over at this moment. This was going to be the peak, penultimate experience of my life, and there was going to be nothing to compare to it after this. And I felt that way. I mean, I actually felt that way. Part of John the actor was going, this is the coolest fucking thing in the world. I want to do this again. Of course, I've never done anything remotely like it again. It's the first time I ever did anything, and I've never done anything remotely like it again. But that, as a young actor, like me, who's doing sit-ups and push-ups all the time, that was a peak experience, and I'll never forget it. It was just magic. So I wish Julie was here. Like, she could talk some of her story, but she was a big part of that, and she was very supportive, and that was awesome. I want to thank Fritz Kiersch and Don Borchers for giving me that memory.
I have a couple of fun ones. I think I had mentioned these to Lee when we talked. One thing that we did was the members of the cast we had a day off, and we went on a boat ride. And it was so fun, because I remember Linda Hamilton and Peter Horton and I were there, and Linda and I had a really great time. So it was a really nice downtime away from the set to kind of bond. So that ended up being really, really fun. And then, let's see, what else was fun? We would have chats with Jeff Greenberg, was the casting director, if I'm remembering correctly. And we had a lot of fun chats. We would hang out in our rooms, and we would all spend time together and just goof off, and that was really fun. And then the night that they had the huge explosion in the cornfield, that was really exciting. Everybody kind of turned out for that. We watched it together. That was fun. And then finally the cast party was, I wouldn't say it's a treasured moment, but it was really a fun kind of ending to the film, because there was a place called the Slaughterhouse that had been a slaughterhouse that somebody thought would be a good idea to turn into a mall. And it was still very much preserved in, the flavor of the slaughterhouse, and that's where we had the cast party, which was perfect because it was really creepy. But you could walk around and you could smell death in the halls, and I thought, the poor investor who thought this would be a good idea. There were meat hooks hanging everywhere, and you could tell the floors were just stained, like, for all eternity with who knows what. And I remember thinking, Great place for a cast party for Children of the Corn. Horrible idea for a mall. I felt so sorry for the guy. But anyway, those are kind of the standout moments for me. I love my time with Linda Hamilton. Really, really enjoyed getting to know her better and taking that boat trip. Loved the explosion, loved the time hanging out with the kids, and loved the cast party. It's the icing on the cake.